But funny enough, we met with Microsoft, we showed him this product and they were able to build it in seconds because of plugging in an agent. My CEO, we laugh about it now. I don't think he laughs about it because he's sunk in some good amount of money for the consultants. He looks at me, he goes, this became redundant almost immediately. Like we could have done it ourselves. And I said, that's right, but we didn't have AI, didn't have agents at the time when we did it. And so as it's progressing more, we're starting to see things that we traditionally were able to do through a consultant or whatever, the traditional model, not fading away, but saying, you know what, let's try it this way and see what happens. So that was an example of what we did before with the consultant to now fast forward. We're doing a lot of things on our own and not requiring consultants and just going directly to players like Microsoft or Salesforce and basically saying, here's some of the ideas, how can we work together and stuff. Of course, because it's such an ever-evolving thing, I think we're going to be hiring probably more people that their mind is geared towards AI and helping us in that respect. But I think that consultant model, for us, at least we tried it. It worked for a moment, but we quickly have now since then pivoted over to, you know what, we can do it ourselves and the technology is evolving at such a fast pace. I'm not sure if I answered your question wholeheartedly, but that's how I read it.
No, you absolutely did. And it gives an example where a company using a technology like Salesforce had a lot of technical debt, and they really did not know what their org looked like. They had no visibility on process. And so every time they went to go make a change, it broke something. And so they hired a company to come in and map out their processes from a business point of view, looking at the actual metadata and really mapping it out. And I believe they spent close to $500,000 doing this. There's a new tool that just came out and it could do it in 5 minutes. So I think it's identifying where the pain is and then seeing if there's a native tool. But I'm curious, in your perspective, companies that are investing a lot of money and have a lot of time and people invested into platforms like Salesforce, you can't just rip and replace it. You're going to go to Microsoft Dynamics or another tool that's going to be just as expensive. What are some of the immediate pains that CIOs are facing that if only they could solve these little nuggets, it would alleviate a lot of the headache and things that are keeping them up at night? Is there anything that stands out to you?
Again, you have great questions, Mike. I'll say a couple of things because you actually reminded me of something when I was at MDC Partners in Stagwell, and this is 2019. A year before I joined, the company had paid $2.5 million to PwC. I think it was PwC. Sorry, PwC, if you hear this, to build them a process for business continuity and disaster recovery. And it was insane to me that they would have spent that amount of money. And what was even crazier was they built it. I don't know if it was reheated data or just did a copy and paste from some other template that they built, but it was never used. Fast forward to today, ChatGPT pushes that out for me in seconds. And it doesn't cost me $2.5 million for anybody. It builds the entire process, tells us what to do. It's quite interesting because you can literally tell using ChatGPT or Copilot, you usually can just say, hey, this is my company, this is what I have, this is the basic process, build me around that, and it will literally do it for you. I think that most CIOs and what keeps them up at night is the challenge of keeping up with how quickly the technology is changing. I think what's keeping them up is things that they didn't address in the last couple of years, whether it was because they were hindered by a CFO and a COO to not make the conscious investment and now having to figure out how to get forward. I think what we touched on, which was basically, do you leave your organization in a decentralized state and hope to God that the AI gets so smart that you can just put it on top, or do you take the opportunity to clean it up? I think all those things are keeping people like myself up at night and figuring out what the best path forward is. I think there's definitely a security element as well, too, right, where it keeps up. I couldn't tell you how many CEOs are just going into things like ChatGPT, which is a great tool, but we still don't know how it's governed and where that data goes and stuff. And to my recollection, unless something's changed, OpenAI is still a private organization. Nothing is free. That's what I've learned over the years, especially in my industry where legal, you have to be extra careful. You are handling first-party data, so you have to be very mindful of that and where that data is injected and put in. And I think that's definitely keeping up some people. up at night. Those are some of the areas that I've seen and also felt personally, what are we doing? How are we doing? Where should we be making investments? Are we doing it in an ethical way? Are we being secure? I do see a lot of organizations that do spend an enormous amount of time trying to unlock that and figure out how do we do it secure? And then they get pressure from executives or the business and themselves if you're not moving fast enough. I'm trying to do it in the right manner, but you're not doing fast enough. And so you get this additional pressure from there as well.
I recently met a CIO who just stepped into the position. There was a bit of chaos when he came in. And the first thing he wanted to do is get a lay of the land of just, I don't care if it's right or wrong, just turn the lights on and show me. And he had a really hard time getting reality checks or really truth from his employees because he's a senior leader. And he wanted to find out what his org structure looked like. He wanted to see what his technology landscape looked like. He wanted to see who was involved, what skill sets, how the system was being funded. And so he had all these questions, but no one would give him an answer because everyone was afraid of, if I share this, it's going to compromise or it's going to highlight all the problems.
Yeah.
Do you think CIOs want to have this information brought to light, or if you've been a CIO for a number of years, is it easier just to stay with what you know and to operate knowing that there's spots that you're not aware of?
You need to know what's going on. You need to pull the truth. One of the things I do is we go through a discovery process, which is what kind of you talked about. And I think it's critical to know your lay of the land, and you should be able to treat it almost your first 90 days. If you're coming in as a seasoned CIO in a large organization, you actually have to take the time to really understand the business, understand where the dead bodies are, how it's working, what's broken.